Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Clubhouse Picks, brought to you by Godzilla Wins. I'm your host, Jack Fredericks, editor of Godzilla Wins, where you can find all of your sports picks and predictions on everything from the NBA to the UFC. Clubhouse Picks is your go-to podcast for PGA predictions, tournament preview, and salty picks for the veteran golf fan. It is a lovely Tuesday evening here in Mississippi on April 4th, and we're here to give you our picks and predictions for the 2023 Masters Championship at Augusta National, one of the most exciting weeks in sports in general. I'm with my co-host, Nate Perry, the greatest handicapping caddy west of the Rockies. Welcome, Nate.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Excited.
Very excited. Yeah. 1 to 10, what's your excitement level? Temperature check.
I think that typically I'm like at a 9, but we've been watching so much golf. We've been like on the golf grind that I feel like maybe I'm at an 8. I feel like I've gotten so much good golf recently that I'm sort of like not as thrilled about it. And the weather's going to be bad. And those are always weird ones from like just a viewing and sort of betting perspective.
They are, especially for the Masters, which one of the reasons people like watching the Masters is because of the beautiful shots of Amen Corner and the 18th, and when the sun's really shining, the flowers are blooming. It's an incredible experience. Less so when it's windy and rainy and overcast, and possibly we have a bunch of weather stoppages. We maybe finish on Monday, stuff like that makes it a little bit more difficult from a viewing perspective. But of course, still one of the most anticipated weeks of the year for the game of golf. Everybody seems to be locked in after the March Madness has just ended. So usually, Nate, what we do is we recap the last tournament. So this would be the Valero. I don't really want to do that.
That's
Not
fine.
to take anything away from Texas Open or Corey Connors' win. I just think I want to focus just specifically on the Masters. Corey Connors won the Texas Open in spectacular fashion. He played a great 4 days of golf. Let's move on to the Masters.
I agree.
This is another thing that I was a little conflicted on this week is we usually do sort of a course preview. I just feel like anyone who's listening or watching the show probably knows enough about Augusta to not have much advantage from what we're going to give them. But for anyone who maybe isn't, Nate, give us a rundown of the most famous golf course in America. What is Augusta National like? What are the challenges? What do you have to be good at?
Yeah. So, I mean, the quick rundown is, most sort of, even casual golf fans have a pretty good idea of what Augusta National is, fast greens, immaculate sort of condition, amen corners, always challenging 10, 11, 12. All of that stuff is sort of just commonplace now. Everyone sort of knows what they're getting with Augusta. It's just so remarkably consistent. And from a betting perspective, or I guess, just from sort of trying to sort of identify what stats are good for Augusta, it generally falls in like one of two categories. You basically have guys that are like really good iron players. They tend to do well there. They're often really good iron players that are sort of mediocre putters a lot of times. Hideki Matsuyama has a win there, obviously. Bernhard Langer had a win there during his career in the 80s, and was famously sort of a bad putter. Vijay Singh played very well at the Masters several times, and has a green jacket as well. Always been a bad putter. So bad putters can win there on the back of really good iron play. And also short game wizards win there, like Patrick Reed. Patrick Reed's probably got some of the worst ball striking stats for a champion sort of in recent memory. And he just did it because of short game, which is unbelievable. So guys that chip really well tend to do well there. Guys that hit their irons really well tend to do well there. Driving and putting are sort of like not as important of stats at Augusta National because the fairways are pretty wide. I mean, the rough is basically non-existent. So you're like really having to like get out of line to be having to play off like the pine straw or something like that. There's, not a ton of hazards off the tee. It's not like a particularly challenging course off the tee, nor is it like overly long. And then the putting is like all those greens are so difficult that even really good putters don't putt well there sometimes. So, it just kind of like balances everything out because there's just so much undulation and speed that it's hard to putt well there.
So you talk a little bit about the undulation. What are some other reasons why it's so difficult to putt at Augusta?
It's difficult to put it. I mean, the speed of the greens is tricky, and they do slope a lot. And the reason, a lot of times on tour, you kind of have these sort of like archetypical skill set type guys, right? You have someone like Patrick Reed, who's, pretty crooked with the driver. He's an okay iron player, and he's a really good short game guy, right? And we talk about guys that, sort of just make their living with their putter, or just make their living because they hit it a really long ways, and that's easy. But the reason that like putting doesn't matter is if you're not like typically a very good iron player, say you're a guy that tends to do most of his damage wielding the flat stick, maybe your iron play is a little shakier. There's a lot of guys that profile like that on tour. The problem with Augusta is if you put yourself in a weird position on a green because you're not very precise with your irons, it's almost impossible to make the birdie putt. There's just too much going on. So that's why it sort of gets knocked out as a thing. Like nobody's just making like 40 footers with regularity at Augusta National. It's just not a thing.
In recent memory, has there been a winner who has putted the ball extremely well, has just gone just totally nuts with the putter?
I mean, Scottie putted pretty well last year. Part of the problem with handicapping Augusta too, and I guess I should mention this, is a lot of what you're sort of viewing is like kind of anecdotal in a lot of ways, because the Augusta National, the Masters doesn't do strokes gained data. So we're relying sort of on like old school, like hard stats, like putts per round stats, putts per green and regulation stats that aren't necessarily indicative of like someone doing something awesome. We're getting greens and regulation stats, but that doesn't really translate into how many good birdies looks you get, from those greens and regulation, all that stuff. So there's not a ton of strokes gained data to rely on, which makes it a little bit trickier. But yeah, but when people have gone back through it, Scottie had an unbelievable short game year. When Patrick Reed did win it, he putted really well.
He did, especially on Sunday.
Yeah, he made everything. So, that's probably the one that I can think of. But most of the time, it's just good, steady play. Cam Smith putted pretty well there, in his sort of close runs with it. But overall, it's not a course where you're just going to be like, catch a hot putter and win. It's just not really that type of place. It just stresses too many other aspects of your game.
How will the weather play a factor in the course? We're looking at pretty bad weather, maybe Thursday through Sunday, lots of wind, possibly rain, play stoppage, all that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
How might the weather really play a factor here?
Well, the only thing that I can think about, like sort of like the most recent ones that have had sort of not awesome weather, is the one that Dustin Johnson won when they played it in November during the COVID year.
Right. Yeah, the COVID year.
That was a really weird sort of weather, like marred tournament. And all it really did. So you're going to see a lot of stuff. Okay. So, all right, back up. Cause I've been thinking about this a lot, because we're always sort of reading and consuming like quite a bit of golf media. Right.
Yeah.
And everyone
absolutely.
always says, oh, rain in the forecast, gonna slow things down, gonna, make the course soft and gettable and blah, 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 and this and that. And that's true of most courses where it's going to rain. They're going to soften up. Augusta National is not most courses. Their irrigation system is unbelievable. They can pretty easily sort of change the moisture level in the soil to whatever they want, basically whenever they want to, because they have such an efficient drainage system for that course. So I'm not like, so I don't think it'll just, there aren't going to be balls just plugging in the fairway because it's wet. And balls aren't just going to be like stopping instantly on the green just because it's been raining. It may soften it up a tad, but it's not just going to be like mud balls and just, a total like disaster out there. The ball's still going to roll when it hits the fairway. Ball's still going to release when it hits greens.
Do you feel like these golf analysts make too much about the weather? I feel like I hear about it pretty much every tournament.
Yeah, and and the Masters is always in April. It's always like this. Like it's always kind of breezy. It's
definitely always breezy.
Georgia in the spring. Like it's always going to be breezy. It's not unusual to have thunderstorms. Typically, they're not big enough storms to like warrant massive stoppages of play. If they are sort of delayed for a long time, it's typically less rain and it's more because of the thunder and lightning. So I mean, I think that people like to do that, and it's just a fun storyline for people to run with and to play weatherman. But I'm not sure that it's exceedingly consequential in that it probably favors guys who can benefit just slightly from maybe a little bit less rollout on the fairways or a little bit less sort of release on the greens. Guys that are really strong iron players or guys that are pretty long probably get a little bit of an edge, but nothing that's like, a guy who's a little bit shorter can't overcome. I don't think it's just going to, cut the field in half because it's wet.
Look, I grew up in Georgia, not that far from Augusta, and the wind is not like in South Florida or out on the coast in California. So that's the other thing.
And Augusta National is fairly sheltered because of all the trees.
Yeah, there's tons of trees. So even if the ball gets up in the air, you're not going to have some sort of 50-mile-an-hour gust pushing it right and interfering with the perfect shot.
Right.
So yeah, the weather is definitely important, and you want to be a good ball striker whenever the weather is rainy or overcast or even anything outside of sunny. That's absolutely true. But you also want to be a good ball striker if you want to win the Masters. Doesn't matter what the weather looks like. That's just something that's important in this course and in this tournament. So, definitely something to think about. But as far as curtailing your picks to suit the weather, I just don't know if I don't really ever think that's a great strategy in golf, because it just never seems to work out for these guys who get too clever with the weather. But I definitely understand why we do that. And it's like one of those things, just everybody's always talking about it. I get tired of talking about the weather, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I'd rather just talk about how these guys can play, but I get it. So listen, Nate, before we get into these picks, and we're about to jump into our what's in your bag and pick some of our guys for the Masters. We got a full card, both you and me. But before we do that, we need to talk about Birch Gold. This is one of our great newest sponsors. We're so happy to be partnering with Birch Gold. Listen, Nate, inflation has consequences, okay? As the Fed raises interest rates to combat out of control government spending, long-term bonds and diminished in value, crippling banks, depositors are holding their breath and investors are bailing on bank stocks. Diversification has never been more important. The recent surge in gold prices is directly tied to the extreme market volatility right now. This is why gold has historically been a great hedge against the stock market and against inflation. Now would be a great time to diversify into gold with Birch Gold Group. Birch Gold makes it easy to convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in precious metals. Here's what you need to do. Text Godzilla, that's Godzilla, Godzilla, to 989-898. That's 989-898 to get a free info kit on gold. They'll help you convert your existing IRA and 401k that's tied to a volatile market into an IRA in physical precious metals, gold and silver. And the best part is it's tax sheltered. Text Godzilla 989-898. That's Godzilla 989-898 to claim your free info kit on gold today. With an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, thousands of happy customers, and countless 5-star reviews, Birch Gold is who you can trust to protect your future. Text Godzilla to 989-898. All right. We want to thank Birch Gold as always. So what's in your bag? This is our format for picks. We start with our driver, our heavy hitter, one of the top 3 guys. Just like in most of our episodes this year, our 3 guys are Scottie Scheffeler, Rory McIlroy, and Jon Rahm. So these are guys with short odds, a bad price, but the best players in the world with the best chances to ruin our fun on Sunday with our 100-to-1 ticket on someone who's just lurking, tied for third or something. So I'll start with you, Nate. Scheffler, yep. Rahm, Rory, who are you taking as your driver this week?
I think it's got to be Scottie again. I feel like I've taken Scottie most of the times when we've had the sort of quote big 3 in action. He's just been so good. I mean, and he's just like so. I think that he doesn't have the flash of Rory's driver. He doesn't have the flash of sort of Rahm's sort of personality. He just sort of just does. He just is good. So I think sort of easy to overlook because he is so sort of polite way to put it, I guess, understated in his personality. But like, I mean, if we're looking at ball striking things that matter, why wouldn't you take the guy who's leading the tour in greens and regulation, and he's leading in strokes gained tee to green? I mean, he's already won at this course. He's not really, the heater hasn't really cooled off for Scottie. I mean,
no, it hasn't.
He's just been incredible. And to think, we were texting earlier, he's 14 months into this. He was on the Corn Ferry Tour a few years ago. Like, this is just, the ascendancy has been so rapid that it feels like he's been here forever. But he really hasn't. I mean, he's really just still playing awesome. So he's my guy. If you want to, I mean, I didn't bet any of these guys, but I think if you want to look at these top three, I think it's just got to be Scottie. I mean, he just has the track record here. The game is perfect.
And this is the thing, we're a picks show, but we'd be remiss not to talk about the big three before a big tournament.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
We're not sitting here telling you, hey, hammer Scottie at 650, 6.5 to 1. That's his odds on DraftKings.com right now. You go to DraftKings, put in the promo code Godzilla, get $150 in free play. But he's plus 650, 6.5 to 1 on DraftKings. And there's a reason. It's because he's the best golfer in the world. Usually I try to do some variety here and pick someone else. I went with Scottie too, because it's the smartest play, I think. Not that Jon Rahm hasn't also been winning on tour. He has. And to be honest with you, Rory's playing better than almost anybody, and he's playing more frequently. But Scottie won last year. So one of the things about the Masters, it's nice to pick some guys who have played well here or have won, or they've won this season, because you have to be just playing hot golf in order to win. You can't come in cold and just all of a sudden win one of the biggest tournaments of the year. It doesn't really happen that way unless you're Brooks Koepka, in which case you're just wired different. He can, miss like four, or when he was playing at top of his game, he could miss like four cuts and then, beat everybody in the US Open by like 9 strokes. Just incredible. So I took Scottie too, like you said. So he's second in strokes gained, first in strokes gained tee to green, first in strokes gained off the tee. Geez, strokes gained approach, he's 6th. Around the green, he's 24th. I mean, that's not bad either. He's not a great putter. It ranks about 100th in strokes gained putting. But again, like we talked about, it's not something I'm valuing. It's not something you're valuing this week. So we don't have to worry too much about that. Greens in regulation, he's first. Bogey avoidance, he's first. I mean, this thing about Scottie,
just like so small, like a list of things to nitpick. It's basically putting, and that's it.
That's it. And it's like, well, you don't have to be that great a putter when you're on the green in like 2. I mean, it's just
when you're the best ball striker in the field. Yeah, your putter doesn't matter as much.
It doesn't. He won at the Players. He won at Waste Management. So he's got 2 wins this year. He won at the Masters last year. He is the best golfer in the world for a reason. And in 2019, he was playing on the Corn Ferry, which is just incredible. It really is. He's only played at the Masters twice. I don't think he played in 2020. If he did, I don't have those numbers in front of me. Won it last year, tied for 18th in 2021. I don't know if he played the COVID year, but if you want to pick a favorite, you have to go with Scottie, I think.
Yeah,
because otherwise you're just, I mean, if you want the short odds, just go with the shortest odds. Go with the guy who is absolutely,
he's the favorite for a reason.
Yeah, he is. And Rahm would be a fine pick, but he's kind of cooled off lately. He had that withdrawal at the Players, so he just hasn't played in a while. I don't know. We all want Rory. I mean, what would that feel like to you as a lifelong golf fan who's been cheering for Rory forever to finally get that Grand Slam? How would that make you feel just as a golf viewer?
I mean, it's huge, right? I mean, there's only like really for people in, my like generation, Tiger's the only one to ever do it. Yeah. I wasn't really around for, obviously I wasn't around for like Jack doing it or Gary Player or anything like that. Certainly not Gene Sarazen. I don't know if there's anyone alive that remembers Gene Sarazen winning the Grand Slam. So yeah, I mean, it would be awesome, and it would be historical, and it would be cool just because I think that for so long we've thought like Tiger is like the pinnacle of the sport, and like his greatness is like, unmatched. And oftentimes that's true, but to see someone accomplish something that only 5 people have ever accomplished, it's just massive. It's a cool story. So from that perspective, yeah, I mean, it would be something that if no money on the line, even if there's money on the line, if Rory wins, I think I'd be happy about it. I think I'd be excited for golf.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, I don't see how you can't be. I obviously wouldn't be as emotional as Tiger's win a couple years ago. That was something that all of us just felt all the emotions kind of coming out when Tiger was able to come back from all those injuries. Everything he had experienced and win the Masters again was amazing, but it wouldn't be that far off because we've all been cheering for Rory to get this Grand Slam for a long time. It's been so elusive for him, and he's played well at Augusta a lot. It's not like he stinks at Augusta. He's always in the conversation, and he will be again today. So,
yeah,
one of the things
he finished second last year.
Yeah. So. Oh, that's right. Yeah, he did. I mean, yeah, that's right. So he's always in the conversation. And as we have learned from Succession, the conversation is important to be inside of. Another conversation you're going to want to be inside of, Nate, is the futures market. Okay. Listen, targettrading.co is just your go-to for the futures trading market. Listen, with all that fear out there about the economy and personal finances, many people are turning to trading the markets to help support themselves and their families. Trading is a risky business. There is no doubt. Trading is not something that should be entered too lightly, and it's all the more reason to get the proper training education. Patrick and Target Trading Academy is considered the #1 futures trading education company in the industry. Over the last 15 years, the team has developed successful, respectable, and repeatable trading strategies, and Target Trading Academy delivers these trading methods to you in a highly structured and effective learning environment. Want proof? You got to check out the student reviews on Trustpilot and everywhere online. People go nuts for Target Trading. You're going to find 5-star reviews across the board. Chris is always saying it's a step to a better financial freedom and quality of life. Whatever the reason you may want to learn to do futures trading, you won't disappoint with choosing this academy. But don't listen to the reviews only. Find out for yourself. Go to www.targettradingacademy.com and sign up for a free virtual campus tour. See why Patrick and Co. are the #1 trading education company in the game. You can call 888-203-3731. That's 888-203-3731. They'll get you set up, or go to targettrading.co. That's targettrading.co. Unlock your future today. All right. So we want to thank Patrick as always, and remind all of our listeners that Saturday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, you can find Patrick talking UFC with us on the Godzilla Wins Picks show. Okay. So there's our driver. That's our big hitter, one of the big guys there. Now we want to look at our irons. These are guys who are reliable. Guys who we know are going to deliver, but their odds are not always the longest. So you might not get rich, but they can win a tournament. They can certainly win the Masters. I've got 2, Nate. How many do you have? 2?
I've got 2. I can do 2. Yeah.
All right. Let's do 2. We're always going to start with our resident golf expert here, Nate. I like to follow him because he's just smarter than I am at this stuff. So go ahead, Nate. Tell us about your first iron.
So my first iron is Tony Finau. And I'm kind of conflicted. I almost put him in a different category, but I still kind of like him. I mean, the odds aren't good. I mean, he sort of opened, after the Masters last year. They usually post Masters odds year round. He was like probably 50. He was in the 50 to 1 range. He's down to 20 now. That's where I bet him at, was 20 to 1. And it's mostly just, it feels like he's ready. It feels like he's ready to break through. I mean, he's finished for so long. It was just, I would just wait to see like what the top 20 finish on Tony Finau played, and then just hammer that, cover all the bets for the week, because it was just like automatic, because he was always 2 to 1 to be in the top 20. And in his career, he's finished in the top 25 in half of his major starts. So he just always shows up. He's always in the conversation. It's our theme for today. But he's not like ever really been in serious contention. But Augusta's different. I mean, his record at Augusta is good. He's had 3 top 10s in 5 starts at the Masters. So he's unbelievably good there. It feels like if he's gonna have a moment that's really gonna be the Tony Finau coming out party, now that he's sort of gotten this sort of thing that he was saddled with, where everyone said he's not a closer, he can't win golf tournaments. I mean, he's won 3 times in the last year. So the closer conversation is sort of starting to be over, and the way that he can really just sort of end that conversation is winning the Masters. So, and the game looks sharp. He putted, his strokes gained stuff for putting was unbelievable in his last tournament he played at the match play. Everything looks like it's in pretty good shape. he's always been a good iron player. So Finau's sort of my first iron guy, I guess. The odds aren't going to make you rich unless you bet a ton of money on it. But just from the perspective of a guy who looks like has the game to play well there, I think Finau's got to be someone you think about.
What's the odds?
He's 20-1 right now.
He does play well at Augusta. I remember that year Mark Leishman was in the conversation. That was the year Patrick Reed won. And Finau was right there. He always is. And he plays well in Masters, but he's never won. So it's just a really difficult. 20-1 is so short for a guy who's never won a major. I mean, it just really is. But
it is.
He's one of the best golfers in the world. That's why he's always in that range. He's never going to drop to 40-1 because he's too good. And at some point, guys who are that good find a way to win. So maybe he breaks through. Interesting pick. I didn't think you'd go there.
I mean, he's third in strokes gained approach to the green, fourth in strokes gained total, fifth tee to green. I mean, the stats are just good, and he's putting really well this year. Normally, he's always such a bad putter, but even the putter's working this year. So I don't see any sort of reason not to bet him, even though he hasn't won a major. I mean, God, when Scottie won last year, he was like 13-1, 15-1 when he went off, and he'd never won a major. He'd only won like 2 golf tournaments his whole career. So.
True. Yeah. But, again, the ascendancy has been so quick. I think everybody knew it was going to happen. It was going to happen very quickly. I mean, we've been waiting for this for Finau for a long time, and that's a wrap on him now. Is he focused enough? Is he committed enough? Is a top 5 finish good enough for him? Does he really have what it takes to dig deep and win a major? Those are questions that a lot of people ask. And I think those are fair questions to ask about someone like Finau, who hasn't shown us that he has that ability to just close. And you have to be able to close, especially on the Masters. I mean, we keep going back to the Patrick Reed year, but one of the most frustrating things about that, if you were trying to catch Patrick Reed, is he just closed like crazy. I mean, and another LIV guy, Bryson DeChambeau, is another one who I always think of as someone who just absolutely closes. Same thing with Brooks. A lot of LIV guys, big closers, I guess. Who knows?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so okay, Finau 20-1. I've got one right in that range here, and this is going to be no surprise to anyone who listens to this podcast. It's going to be my man Justin Thomas at 22-1.
JT.
I was going to go elsewhere. Like, I was going to go to my boy Tom Kim, and I thought, no, I need someone who whose stats just back up everything I'm looking for. And what I'm looking for here is good ball striking, as always. That's usually what I look for in any tournament, but I'm definitely not looking for guys long off the tee. I want guys who are good at approach. Around the green, I really like this week. Bogey avoidance, all that stuff. Thomas is tee to green 11th, which is a big number, especially just when you throw out the putting, which we don't think is important. So he's good tee to green. He's around the green. He's first. He's always been good around the green. He's a good scrambler as well. Putting is 147, so that's not good. That is like, you can say, oh, well, putting doesn't matter, but minus 0.217 is not good.
Right.
So he hasn't been putting well, and he would say that as well. Approach is 54th. So he's always been a good irons player, always seen as one of the best irons players in the game. He's still playing well with his irons. Good year so far. Not great, but good. Tied for 60th at the Players. It's kind of the only real outlier. Other than that, 10th at Valspar, 21st at API, 20th at Genesis, 4th at Waste Management. So he's been playing good golf. That's why he's 22-1. He's also someone who plays relatively well at the Masters. He's never missed a cut. I think he's played in 7 tournaments, or maybe 8. I think it's 7 though. He's never missed a cut. Yeah, 7 tournaments, never missed a cut. Scoring average is 71.54. His best finish was 4th during that COVID year in August with the weather weird. So that's another thing. Okay, if you're thinking maybe the weird weather is an analog this year when DJ won it, maybe it's similar for JT, who finished 4th. Lowest round was 66. Doesn't really mean much. I do love, by the way, I mean, this is like another thing about the Masters is so great. They don't track the strokes gain stuff, as you said, but they have an incredible website. You can see all the players' histories. You don't get that at other stuff. So if you're doing this stuff like we are, I have to go to a whole bunch of different websites to get the data on how they played in a certain course. A lot of times you go to Data Golf. Of course, we love Data Golf. ESPN has the results, stuff like that. But the Masters puts it all right there for you. They're not going to tell you strokes gained, but they'll tell you greens in regulation, all sorts of stuff like that. And they have everybody. So, shout out to Augusta National. They do such a good job with all of the fan interaction. It's one of the reasons people love Augusta. So yeah, I'm in a JT 22-1. We'll see. It's not one. I mean, again, it's a short price, but once you get down past the 40s, 50s, I mean, you're really going to be sweating some of those guys because the field is too packed. You got to hope for a Danny Willett situation, someone coming out of absolutely nowhere. Even when Serge won it, it was like, well, yeah, I mean, where's he been? We've been waiting for this. So I don't know. We'll see. But I got JT. That's my first. Who's your second?
My second one, I've kind of gone back and forth on this one a lot, but I think I'll just sort of settle on. I mean, so I've probably talked about this on the show before, but in like July of last year, I bet Max Homa at like 85-1 to win this tournament.
Oh,
and
wow.
I thought, so
that was a long time ago.
That was a really long time ago. We've been sitting on this baby for about 10 months.
I'm not sure that was a necessary bet, but I mean, hey, listen.
Well, but since then his odds went like 60-1, like pretty shortly after that. And then they were like 40. And now he's pretty much like, I think he kind of bottomed out at like 22 at a lot of places. Now he's kind of 28-ish. But he's just been playing unbelievable golf, and he's won some tournaments already in his career. Like, as sort of, he's ascended to this sort of elite echelon of golfers. He's played some really good competition. He's close on some really elite sort of like classic courses, like players courses like Riviera. So this just felt like a tournament that was sort of ripe for him, sort of, coming out and playing well as well. So the problem, I guess, with Max, and, some of this is just sort of, people just start surging so quickly when they start to catch some momentum, sort of figure out how to win on tour. Like, Max has never really played well in any majors. His major record is not good. He's not been very good at Augusta when he's played. He's played 3 times at Augusta. He's made the cut once, and it was a tie for 48th last year, when he was also playing pretty well. So
yeah, that's not good.
From a course history standpoint, like, there's nothing to say like, oh, Max is like, a shoo-in. It's not like Finau. It's not like JT where he has some finishes that you can kind of look at and like give you hope. Like Homa doesn't have that. So 28-1, it's tough to recommend him. Like, obviously, like 85-1 was awesome, because now he is an elite player. But I still think he's got enough juice to do well here. I mean, in his stats, fit. I mean, most of these elite guys that we're talking about pretty much have games that are going to translate pretty well to Augusta. He's no different. He's 3rd in strokes gained total. He's 5th in strokes gained approach, 10th in putting, 6th tee to green. The sort of weakest aspect of Homa's game is probably off the tee. Even though he's still gained strokes off the tee, it's probably like the least strong part of his game. But like we were saying earlier, it's not a terribly important statistic off the tee at Augusta National. You don't need to be the best driver in the world. You don't need to be particularly long, and you don't need to be particularly straight. So I like Max here. I mean, obviously it's tough to recommend him at 28-1, but he's worth sort of talking about here. Just because I think that, yeah.
Yeah, so on DraftKings, he's 30-1. I think that's fine. He's really good and has won a couple times lately. Yeah, he struggled at Augusta, but that doesn't mean he's going to struggle this year. I don't think he's going to struggle at all.
I just don't think he's bringing the same level of game in or confidence. Like, I think that he's so much more confident now.
Yeah.
And sort of what he can do.
He is a West Coast guy, though. A lot of his wins and a lot of his big finishes are West Coast wins. But again, Augusta's not Florida. It's not even Texas. It's a whole different type of course. It doesn't exactly play like a Southeastern course at times because of a lot of different reasons. There's a lot of tree protection. It's over. The irrigation's really crazy. So it's a very particular course. I'm not exactly sure that matters so much.
Yeah.
But I think at 30-1, he's fine. I mean,
you got
obviously
like
we'd like to get,
I mean, he's been playing awesome golf too. I mean, he won the Farmers earlier this year. Cooled off the next week at the Phoenix Open where he's tied for 39th, but since then it's 2nd, 14th, 6th, and 9th. I mean, so he's been like right around the top of the leaderboard. It's not like his game is slumping. Like, he just hasn't, reeled off like all these spectacular wins, and the win that he did have was a little while ago.
I think it'll be fine. I think 31's okay. I was actually going to take him as an iron, and then I thought you might, so I asked you so that we didn't have too many of the same guys. So I went with a real wild card for my second iron. This is not as reliable as some of the others, but I kind of like him this week, and I can't really tell you why. Usually I've got a logos here. I can tell you, okay, around the green is what I'm looking for. Approach, bogey avoidance, strong iron guys. But this week, I don't know. I got my man Sam Burns. He's my other iron. 45 to 1. Okay, so old Sam, all right. First of all, he's 26. I feel like that's the right age to win the Masters. So that's my first thing. I mean, if you're going to win the Masters, do it when you're 26. So there's number one. 46th in total strokes gained. So that kind of tells you right there why he's about 45 to 1, because that's about where he ranks in strokes gained. Very tricky tee to green, but we're not too worried about that, although it is important. Off the tee's 35th, so he's a pretty good driver. Terrible approach game so far this year, 175, and really not that good around the green either at 73rd. But, and this just goes against everything I've been saying, but I don't know, I just like Sam this week, so I'm just going to roll with it. He's 10th in putting, so he's been putting like crazy. And the thing I really like about him is, even though the stats don't really back it up as much as you would like, I mean, at 45 to 1, you're not going to find guys, especially at the Masters, you're not going to find guys in the top 10 in most of these stats. So the fact that he's in the top 10 in putting is fine for me. But he won the WGC and he beat some really good players. Now, match play is weird, but he 2 weeks ago, he just played some of the best players in the world on Sunday and he won. That's huge, because if he's in the conversation on Sunday, I now know that he's not afraid of the challenge. Masters is different than match play, but still. 6th at Valspar, 6th at Waste Management, 35th at the Players, 11th at American Express. I don't know. That's some good golf from Sam.
It is, and it's worth looking at his stats too. Like, you know, now that I'm sort of staring at them, you know, his strokes gain stuff, especially the approach game, it's really like he's actually not had that many tournaments where he's lost, you know, very many strokes, if at all. With his approach game recently, he just has 2 really, really horrible tournaments in the last year that sort of like dinged him. I mean, I don't know what he was doing at the Arnold Palmer, where he lost 4.4 strokes on approach.
Oh, no. Yeah.
But since then, you know, he's right around average, you know, minus 0.01 when he won, plus 0.34 at the Valspar for another good finish, minus 0.04. Like, those are more typical of Sam Burns, as him just being sort of an average approach player. You know, it's not really hurting him that much. But it's just like that, like the Arnold Palmer was a disaster, and then he lost 2.4 at Houston. Like, but other than that, he doesn't have any just glaringly like, oh my God, what happened type things. And at Houston, everything fell apart for him. So like, that's not even like I don't know what he was doing there, but everything was bad. So, yeah. And he ended up withdrawing because I think he was injured. So
that's the other thing.
Yeah. So I think that it's like sort of, you know, worth like sort of digging a little bit deeper when you're looking at someone like Sam Burns, because you look at, you know, the sort of season long stats and you're like, oh my God, this is a train wreck for his ball striking. But when you look sort of individually, it's not that bad.
And that's really important. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I didn't really think to or have the time to look at some of the individual stuff. But it didn't make a ton of sense to me why he was, because I've been watching him play golf. So I'm watching him play thinking Sam Burns is playing pretty good. And then I'm looking at his strokes gained thinking, well, what is this? This is not good. This isn't good at all. So, you know, that's one of those things where like we can have a logos and we can look at stats. We can have an approach to how I want to pick games or how I want to pick golfers. But sometimes it's feel. I mean, if you're not watching golf, then you don't know. And I just feel like Sam Burns is playing above what we're seeing. And I think that has bore itself out in some of the tournaments that he's finished pretty high in. I don't think he's afraid of the challenge. And I like the 45 to 1 odds. I mean, that would be a really fun ticket to cash at the Masters. And you get to root for someone kind of off the beaten path a little. You know, golf fans don't exactly know. So it would make for an exciting Sunday if you were able to put together 3 good rounds and he'd be an instant lifelong favorite for me if he were to able to even just make it fun on Sunday. So I'm hoping that happens as well. Okay, so I've got Sam Burns at 45 to 1, JT at 22-1. You have Finau at 20-1 and Max Homa at about 30-1 on DraftKings.com. New wrinkle in our system here as we move right along to some other picks. New wrinkle. We got the LIV Guys. Here come the LIV Guys. They're back. They're ready to play some golf. They're all, according to Greg Norman, they're all going to be around the green celebrating when, I don't know.
When one of them wins. Yeah.
Yeah. When
Maybe,
Mito Pereira gets the win or whatever. Doesn't he play on? Yeah. I think he
does,
plays
yeah,
on the
Mito's
tournament.
there.
Yeah. Yeah. When Mito gets that win at 80-1, everybody will be clapping for him, including Patrick Reed on the green or whatever. So this is our driving iron. This is something in the bag that you really like. You look at it before you leave for your round and you think, I should put that in my bag. I should take that. And you never do. And that's your LIV guy, because they're great, but we don't ever get to see him play unless you just are locked into the CW, which some people are. I got one, but I could have like four.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of got like a handful, I guess. Like I kind of lumped them all together like a little bit for mine. So, but you go first. Yeah.
Oh, mine is so boring. I wish it weren't, because I was looking at Mito and I was looking at, Patrick Reed, of course, Brooks. I got in a big Twitter fight with everybody about Brooks Koepka earlier this on Monday, because I was like, oh, I think he's pretty good at like 30-1. And everybody was like, no, he's like horrible. And he plays on LIV and he's hurt and he sucks now. And that's the stupidest thing you could ever do is bet him. So, I still think he's got a lot of value at 40-1 for a guy who's an absolute animal, but he's not my pick. Cam Smith. I had to go with Cam. And the reason is because it's just, he is so good and his stats are ridiculous. And that's not always true of these LIV guys. Some of these guys are not playing good golf at all. Not true of Cam. Of course, he's won a bunch of tournaments before. Won the Players, wasn't able to compete this year. He's 35-1, 11th in total strokes gained, 28th in tee to green, that's strokes gained. Off the tee, 136th. So nothing, he's never been majorly great off the tee, but that's not as important to us. 5th in approach, so he's almost gaining his 0.771 on approach, which is crazy. Around the green, 42nd, 8th in putting. We all know Cam Smith can putt. Bogey avoidance, 29. So he's right there in a lot of these categories that I'm looking at. He's just in the conversation. He's in the conversation right there. Masters results. Now, I didn't go through his current results because I'm just not locked in to LIV enough to tell you what any of that means. If he finished, 5th in some tournament, I just don't know enough about LIV. But I really like, so in the Masters, he made all 6 cuts that he's played in, lowest round 66, 13 rounds under par. I think he's played like 28 rounds, or 24. So that's really good, because I've got some other guys who have played in a lot of Masters, but they're not, they don't always play a bunch of rounds under par. Cam, of course, does. So that's my guy, Cam Smith, 35-1. I don't think there's any reason. I just feel like 35. Do you feel like 35-1 is too high, or am I just crazy?
I mean, it feels too high, given that the futures market for most of the season, or for sort of like most of last year, had Cam sort of like in the 12 to 18-1 range. I mean, he was like right there, kind of in the conversation as a favorite. So yeah, it's weird to see his odds kind of drift a little bit now. But I mean, he's always been good there. I mean, his results have been solid there. I can't fault anyone for wanting to do it. You just wonder how sharp these guys are. Like if I'm going to take someone at a price, or if I'm going to take a LIV guy, like we're doing for this segment, I want it to be like long odds. I mean, I don't think you're wrong taking Cam, but I want guys that are like long.
Like who you got?
I kind of just had them all kind of lumped together. They're like the second tier LIV guys. They're guys that have played well in majors in their career. But they're not like the household names. They're not Brooks. It's not Bryson. It's not DJ. It's not Cam. It's guys like, honestly,
Kevin.
You already mentioned him, Mito,
baby.
I mean, Mito's
he's kind of good. He's looking. Okay, tell me why. Because I'm all excited about Mito. So tell me.
I mean, the approach numbers have always been good for Mito. I mean, that's like sort of like the strongest like aspect of his game. And And the problem with LIV and sort of the problem with evaluating some of these results is we don't get the advanced metrics from LIV. They don't do strokes
No.
gained tracking. So you're just sort of looking at the finish and you're just sort of saying like, well, they're okay. But if we're just sort of going on, what I remember from when Mito was playing well previously, like, he's finished last 2 LIV tournaments, he's finished 6th both times. Seems like he's been playing pretty well. And I think that the iron game is a huge strength here. So, I mean, someone like Mito at 80-1, like definitely is like getting my attention for sure. Abe Answer's another guy. He's 110-1, kind of like maybe like him, someone like that. Like those 2 guys in particular are guys that like, have had some major experience. Mito sort of famously collapsed on the 18th hole of the PGA Championship last year, shortly before he went to LIV. The year that JT won it last year. But so I mean, he's been there before. He's played well in major before, in that major, anyways. So I'd be willing to gamble on somebody like Mito or Abe Answer, who's also really long odds, before I'd be willing to just like dial in my Dustin Johnson ticket or something like that.
Okay, so Answer. I want to talk about him for a minute because I think he's really interesting to look at from the perspective of strokes gained last year at the Masters. So Answer was cut. So I don't know, you talk about these guys in strokes gained cut. Well, they only played 2 rounds, so whatever. But for the sake of the conversation, we'll go with it. So +7 strokes gained putting, plus 2.72, almost 3 strokes gained putting last year. And he nothing else that's first in the field, 2.72.
Right.
Nothing else is even in the green. Around the green, minus 2.87, approach minus 1.39. Tee to green minus 8. I have to squint. Minus 8.26 tee to green. No, that's not him. Hold on, that was someone else. Minus 4 tee to green. Off the tee, almost a little bit in the green, 0.25. So anyway, that's too many numbers. The main thing is he putted like nuts last year. And I looked at that earlier and I said, well, that's kind of crazy because he missed the cut. And we don't care as much about putting. That's why, look, he was first in strokes gained putting and he missed the cut. So obviously putting's not the most important thing in the world, but I don't know. I mean, yeah, Abe Answer. I mean, if he's got a putt like that, you might as well take him at least top 20.
Yeah. And I mean, those stats are like a little bit of an outlier too. Like it seems like, I'm just, yeah, like the putting is like, he's always been an okay putter throughout his career. But he was always known for like being good around the greens and like being a pretty reliable iron player, at least steady enough, and sort of couple that with like a really good short game. So it's weird that his like short game numbers were so terrible in his last Masters, and his iron game was awful. And the best thing about him was he just like putted the eyes out of the ball. So, I mean, yeah, but Abe's another guy that had a pretty good major year last year when he played all the majors. He finished tie for 9th at the PGA and tie for 11th at the Open. So, he's been towards the top of a lot of these leaderboards. He's played okay at the limited number of Masters he's played. He had a tie for 13th in the COVID year. But yeah, I mean, I like Abe here at 110-1. I've been thinking hard about betting him. I haven't pulled the trigger yet, but I've, thought about it. Definitely.
I think I'm going to pull the trigger on a top 10 finish at plus 800.
Yeah.
I think that's almost immediately what I'm going to do with him. So we both like him. I also like Mito. I like Mito kind of maybe outright at plus 800. I mean, I just like Mito's game. Yeah. I'm sorry. Plus 8,000, 80-1. So yeah. Okay. Well, so some of those LIV guys, any other LIV guys you like?
I mean, I don't know, maybe like Gooch or something. He's 130-1, but I mean, you're really kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel. His results haven't been very good. I mean, this is just sort of like past form. Like I remember him being a good iron player, but I have no data to back that up because he hasn't played anywhere where they've measured strokes gain data since like September of last year. So I have no idea what he's playing like.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing with LIV. I mean, it's like, it's really,
so I mean, you're just like dart throwing and just being like, used to be a good iron player. Maybe he still is. I don't know. I don't watch enough LIV golf to be able to like, give it even the eyeball test.
LIV doesn't give us the stats we need, and we're not watching enough LIV golf. So how are you going to handicap these guys? And then everybody on Twitter is just like, they all act like they are their caddy. I mean, you bring up a LIV guy and they're like, oh my God, Patrick Reed, I know all about him. It's like, how much LIV golf are you really watching? But maybe they are. I have no idea. I'm not. So Nate, we're going to switch gears in a minute here to our wedges, our putters, and our hybrid, or maybe our fairway wood, whatever you want to call it. But first, we really got to thank Ignacio and our partner at Ignite 45. If you're a small business owner struggling to generate leads and revenue, then this message is for you. In today's economy, a winning digital strategy is a must. Without it, your business could fall behind and lose out. Many business owners struggle with outdated websites and no real presence on Google when people are searching for their services. But don't be discouraged. Ignite 45 can fix that. They design great websites that turn visitors into paying customers and create SEO strategies that rank your business on top of search results. Ignite 45 is also the first digital agency dedicated to helping your business reach millions on your social media platform of your choice. If you're ready to see real results and work with a digital partner that shares your values, then give them a call today at 720-740-1776. That's 720-740-1776, or visit ignite45.com/Godzilla. Use the promo code Godzilla to save $100 on your digital needs today. All right. Ignacio, Ignite 45. Love that guy. Time for the wedge. I'm absolutely locked in for this wedge. I mean, I think this is my best bet of the week. I really do. The wedge is someone you love to bet but never wins, which is why I'm locked in, because I love this guy and he never wins. But I want to go with you first because I'm just interested in what you have, and then we'll go to me.
Yeah, I mean, I struggled with this because a lot of the guys that I bet this week have won. Like, that's the reason I bet them is because like they're big time players. They've won majors, guys like I guess like Finau could have been my wedge, but I already talked about him. Mm-hmm. So I guess I'll talk about a guy that, never really has won. That I kind of like at 35-1 is Cameron Young. Did I just steal your thunder?
All right.
Okay.
No, you didn't. No. My wedge, man, he's out there. He's way out there.
Yeah, Cam Young hasn't won a tournament yet on the PGA Tour, right? But he's been close. I mean, second at the Open last year, finished second the tournament afterwards, has a third place finish at the Hero World Challenge, which was a pretty strong event, usually field wise. Played in the Saudi International, was second there, was second in the match play. So I think that Cam Young is a guy that, like, it wouldn't surprise me. In a lot of ways, he feels like his ascendancy feels like kind of similar to Scottie, like just a super talented guy, not necessarily the most exciting personality, so people kind of overlook him. But I mean, all the numbers are there. I mean, the stats make sense to me that Cam Young should be like on my mind here. I mean, the approach numbers are really good. He hits the ball really long ways. Typically things that sort of hurt Cameron Young are like occasionally the driver because it gets a little sideways, but that's just not a concern at Augusta. Sometimes he doesn't putt very well, but that's again not really a concern at Augusta. So, I mean, I love the iron play, and he just seems poised to just really step into the conversation as like a hot young guy like we're like taking notice of. I mean, he's climbed to 14th in the world with basically on the backs of like just finishing top 5 all the time and never actually winning.
Yeah.
So there's a guy that never wins that I find myself betting all the time, and then I watch him finish second.
The driver doesn't matter as much. I mean, it's not that hard to hit from the pine straw. It just isn't.
No. And the rough is like nothing. The rough is like half an inch most of the places, it's like the ball that dribbles off in the fairway, like at most it's maybe like an inch sometimes around the green. Like it's just like not very long.
Yeah.
And every lie is perfect. So like, even if it is in the rough, like it's just immaculate. Like it's not just going to be like some weird deep patch that somebody forgot to mow or something like that.
It doesn't happen there.
It is not a thing.
Okay. So Cam Young, interesting pick. I like it. 35-1. I'm going real long here. I love this guy. Tom Hoagie. 0
Oh yeah. You
wins.
love Hoagie.
0 wins. But man. Okay. So 100-1. That's first off. That's long for the Masters.
That is long.
But I feel like he should be, I don't feel like he should be 100 to 1, but I'll tell you why he is. So listen, total strokes gained, he's 14th. I mean, total strokes 1.316. So he's playing well, way better than 100 to 1 odds there. Tee to green, 26. Off the tee, which we don't rate that high this week, 119th. So not a great driver, can be a little crooked. Around the green is really, really where he struggles. 175th, minus 0.277 there. Approach, he's first in the country in approach. So if you're talking about strong iron players right now, I don't see why you can't be considering Tom Hoge. 1.255 in his strokes gained. And then bogey avoidance is 17. And he's been playing pretty good.
Great at the
Inconsistent.
Players.
Yeah, he finished third at the Players.
Yeah.
Cut at the API, 14th at Genesis, cut at Waste Management, 48th at Pebble Beach, 42nd in American Express. I mean, it's inconsistent. He's only played at the Masters once. He made the cut, but you can't really glean much from 4 rounds at the Masters. So I'm not really going to go into that. I just think at 100 to 1, it's nuts not to take him.
Sure.
I mean, it would be a story. Everybody would be talking about it, but he's going to be in the conversation, I think. And if you're just thinking, no, this is stupid, like he's not going to win, I understand where you're coming from. Trust me, I really do. And in that case, maybe think about him for like a top 10. I mean, he just finished third at the Players. I'm trying to find his odds here for a top 10 finish. Plus 700. I mean, so you're getting 7 to 1 odds for him to finish in the top 10. He's shown he can do that. I don't think he's going to get cut. His iron play is way too good for right now to get cut. I mean, like he's playing well, and he'll be fine off the tee. I didn't look at his putting, but I think it was fine. It was like in the 20s. So
yeah, he's an okay putter. Yeah.
So that's my wedge. I really like Hoge, but I don't know. I'm really stretching for some of these guys who have long odds, because I just think I watch enough golf where I think I can probably find the guy who, if he wins, he surprises everybody. It doesn't happen all the time at the Masters, but every once in a while it does. Those odds could be long. Maybe it's Hoge. So that's my wedge. Now our putter. This is my bet and regret. I got another good one for your putter too here. This is a guy you love, this guy. So bet and regret. This is a guy you immediately regret the minute you punch that ticket. You want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first. I'm still thinking about this.
You love this guy. You love him. He's your guy.
You talking about man Tyrrell?
Oh no,
Okay.
I'm done with Tyrrell. I'm not watching that guy like throw a temper tantrum for 4 days and then finish like third. Like I can't. I love Tyrrell. He's playing amazing.
Yeah.
But I don't want to watch him for 4 days because he looks so miserable. He looks like me out there. Like and he's not. I mean, he's so good. So, no, Tommy Fleetwood.
Oh yeah, I do like Tommy.
55 to 1, 5,500. And I mean, remember when Fleetwood was like automatic 22 to 1? I mean, that was for years. You couldn't get better odds than 22 to 1. That's where his line was all the time. All of a sudden he's crept up. And he's got some good finishes. I mean, he finished third at the Valspar, 27th at the Players, 61st at the API, I guess, 20th at the Genesis. And his stats are nuts. Total strokes gained 11th, tee to green 12th, approach 25th. Around the green, he's second. He struggles with bogey avoidance, 124th bogey avoidance. I don't know what he's doing there. 96th off the tee, but we're not interested in that really. I just, and he's played at the Masters 6 times. He's made 5 cuts, so he missed 1 cut. Biggest problem with Fleetwood, and of course we know this because if you ever watched Fleetwood, this was always his rap. So 22 rounds played at the Masters, only 9 under par. That's not great. You want to be at least at 50% there. If you're going to win a tournament, you got to play pretty much at least 3 days under par. And the crazy, this has always been the thing with Fleetwood. He'll post a 72 and then he'll post a 62. Like he'll break a record and then he'll lose the tournament because when he gets hot, he's like the greatest golfer out there, but he'll post, the next day some mercurial number and finish in the top 5.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited about Fleetwood. I think that this is at 55 to 1, you got to be nuts not to be thinking about him.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. I mean, the iron game's always been there, right? I mean, and quite honestly, he might be a guy that's a little bit more comfortable sort of coming in a little bit more under the radar. So, from that perspective, I guess I don't hate it. I feel like more intriguing sort of I think I'd rather take, like, if I'm looking at like 50 to 1 range, I think that like Fitzpatrick is like more interesting than like Fleetwood. Maybe,
Sure, yeah. I
but
mean, Fitzpatrick, I think that's a weird number for him. I think he should be in the 20s as well. I don't know why he's not.
yeah.
There must be something there. But let's not discount the fact that you took Fleetwood probably every week for like 5 years. So
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. And like
I
usually in the
mean,
majors, I was always talking myself into him like 28 to 1, being like, this is still gonna happen.
yeah. So
Much
maybe
like
you're
I did
just
with
burned
Ricky
out.
Fowler. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I am. Yeah. I may have Fleetwood fatigue now.
I mean, there were years where he was one of those guys you bet him every week.
Yeah.
Him, Tyrrell Hatton, a couple other guys, but you were always on Finau. You were always on Fleetwood.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just think 55 to 1 is nuts for him. But you're right, Fitzpatrick. I looked at Fitzpatrick because he's playing really good golf. There's no reason for him to be that low. Again, this is our bet and regret category. So I'm
Right.
not saying
Yeah.
Fleetwood's going to win, but I couldn't resist the 55 to 1 odds on a guy who is just, I think, still at the top of his game and could win a major at any point.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess if we're getting to mine, mine is definitely one that I've been regretting for a while. And it is Matthew Fitzpatrick.
Okay.
So that's a natural segue, I guess, because he is interesting at 50 to 1, right? Major winner
Yeah.
now. He had an unbelievably hot 2022, where he's just always right up in there in the hunt. Obviously won the US Open. Had some pretty, solid finishes, was really close in the PGA last year and played well at Augusta last year. His worst finish in a major last year was tied for 21st. So he's always a guy that seems to be building towards the majors, much like a lot of these sort of elite players do. So I made this bet on him in like January or February. And he was like, I'll pull it up. The odds weren't good. And I was like, they're just going to get lower. And I just need to get on it now because I love Fitzpatrick. I cashed a ticket when he won the US Open. And I was like, I just love this guy. He's going to win more. And so I made these bets in January and he was 35 to 1. And I thought 35 to 1 still doable. Like I can live with that. If he wins another time or two, then he's going to be like 20 to 1. And then I'm going to have a hard think with myself. So I was like, I'll just jump on at 35 to 1. And now he's 50 to 1, right? Because I bet him basically like when he was like finishing like in the top 10 at the Century Tournament of Champions. Is basically like when I like made that bet. He was playing well there. Instantly goes out, misses the cut, tie for 29th, misses a cut, tie for 14th, cut, tie for 31st, match play. Like, not good. So the results just like suck right now. Like his iron game has not been good. He's not been particularly like awesome off the tee in his most recent sort of outings. So I mean, really, I'm just hoping for like sort of a massive reversal in some aspects of his game that were really strong last year that just seem to have disappeared this year, particularly his iron play.
Yeah.
So I think, I like Fitz and obviously how I'm going to be rooting for him. He's had this stupid 35 to 1 ticket, but like, I wish I would have waited and gotten 50. That would be awesome.
Yeah, that
at least
would have
like
been.
do myself a favor and not just take like the huge discount on him like an idiot. So, or like the huge, I guess, premium on him like an idiot. So, I regret that bet for sure. I wish that I hadn't done it. And honestly, I don't even know now. I think that he's intriguing at 50 to 1 based on sort of previous success, but I'm not sure like I love it. Like even then, I mean, the results just there's nothing to suggest that he's primed for like an awesome week.
No.
I guess.
But sometimes you take that risk because he could have gone down and he could have won, the Valspar or something, or he could have finished second at the Players and he'd be 22 to 1 and you'd be like, heck yeah, I got him at 50 to 1. So good for me.
Right.
You always play. No, I mean, some guy on Twitter told me he got Brooks Koepka at 99 to 1. I mean,
that's crazy.
I'd love to take that. He was 85 to 1 for a long time. So he's one who, if you did take that gamble, he's not like 40 to 1 because he's been playing well at LIV and he's, just a behemoth in the Masters. So a lot of, sometimes you take those bets, but I definitely understand why it's a bet and regret there. You definitely wish you had the better odds. So, oh well.
Yeah.
We're going to get to the putter in a minute. No, that was our putter. That's our bet and regret. We're going to get to the fairway wood in a minute, the hybrid. That's our guy who can really make us rich if he can just put it all together. But first, we want to talk about Rosie's Gaming Emporium. Clubhouse Picks could not function without Rosie's, Nate. It just couldn't function. Today's show is brought to you by Rosie's Gaming Emporium. Rosie's has paid out over $475 million in jackpots so far this year. That's crazy. Numbers are just going up. I got to get March's numbers. I still got February. February's winners include, though, Alex. Oh, Alex crushed it. 140 grand at Rosie's in Dumfries. Love that. Love that spot there. Tabitha, 99K at Rosie's in Richmond. Douglas, 93 at Rosie's in Dumfries. I mean, Dumfries is just going off the hook there. What a month for February for Rosie's at Dumfries. Robert, we call him Bob, 46K, Rosie's in Vinton. This is you add all that up, that's a down payment on a mansion. That's just nuts. Starting in March and now April, new members play for free at Rosie's. Sign up for a free Rosie's rewards card and instantly receive $25 up to $1,000 in free play for your first visit. That's nice. Little $1,000. I can figure out what to do with $1,000 in free play. I'll go to the slot machine. I don't care. That's a lot of, look, you give me some comps, I'll be at the buffet. I will figure out a way to get that money back to Rosie's. Learn more about this promotion, Rosie's rewards and jackpots at rosiesgaming.com. That's rosiesgaming.com. Don't forget, horse racing starts July 13th at Colonial Downs in New Kent, Virginia. And my father, the Godzilla of Truth, says he'll be there for the entire month. The man loves his horses. Okay, so we're almost done here. Been a long pod, but this is the Masters. Very important. We've got our hybrid, maybe our fairway wood. That's what I've been hitting lately. This is your guy who, I'll tell you what. And I got a lot of guys with some long odds, but this guy's the longest for me. And if he can put it all together, I'm retiring. Don't need it anymore. You'll never see me on another podcast again. Let's start with you, Nate. Who's your long odd here?
I went back and forth on this, and we joked last week about like Alex Noren, right? And I was like, man, we have hard think at 180 to 1.
You do love Alex Noren. And
I ended up not deciding to take it. The one that I like, the one that I sort of think is one that's primed, and he kind of got the media kiss of death. I saw him featured on the Masters website, a little personality piece.
Another media. Who was the media kiss of death last week?
It was Bo Hostler last week, and this week I think it's probably Sahith. But I love Sahith.
Yeah.
And ideally, like he should be a guy. His stats look like a guy who could just sneak up and win a Masters. He's a good iron player. He's got an elite short game. The thing that always gets him is he's long enough, but he's really like inaccurate and wild with the driver. But that's a type of person that tends to profile really well at Augusta. It's just so minimized off the tee. So I think Sahith at 120 to 1, why couldn't he put it together? He hasn't won anywhere, but not like people haven't just jumped up and won the Masters for their sort of first tournament or first majors. So
he's still a rookie, isn't he? I guess last year.
Last year, kind of like wrapping around. Yeah. But yeah, I kind of like Sahith, I guess. That's
problem is he hasn't really been playing that well this year.
No, he played okay in February, tie for 6th at the Genesis, tie 14th at Arnold Palmer, didn't play well at the Players. And he played, his ball striking numbers were actually really good at the WGC, even though he didn't have a lot to show for it. But he gained, a stroke and a half on approach of his iron game. So the iron game that sort of abandoned him at the Players Championship seems to have been regained a couple weeks later at the match play. So the iron numbers have been pretty good, aside from sort of some spectacular sort of bad ones like outliers, but generally tends to be hitting it pretty well right now. Really is just being held back off the tee. So I like Sahith. This just looks like Augusta National is the type of course that rewards guys that are really creative and And Sahith is definitely one of the most creative sort of younger players in terms of being able to hit a wide variety of shots and being able to recover really effectively from sort of awkward areas. So I like him.
Yeah, he's fearless. He's plus 750 to finish in the top 5, 20 to 1 to finish in the top 10. He's a good bet, I think. I think even to make the cut, probably 2 to 1 odds to make the cut. I think he's probably gonna make the cut. So he's not as much of a wild card as I think you might be led to believe based on the odds. He's just young, and at some point he's going to put it all together. And when he does, it's all of a sudden he's going to be 40 to 1, like all the time, because that's how good he is. And everybody agrees. I mean, that's not even a hot take. Everybody knows Sahith is going to put it together at some point. And if he doesn't, it's going to be, a travesty, because he's just an incredible golfer and one that's fun to watch.
Right.
Okay. You like Sahith. What was that? 100 to 1? Like 1100 to 1?
130 to 1.
Oh, 130. That's great, because I got a guy who's 130 to 1.
Yeah. So 120 to 1.
Who's
Sorry.
130?
120
to 1. All right. I got one 130 to 1. I love this guy. I think he's sneaking. I think he's primed. Georgia boy. Chris Kirk. So Chris Kirk.
All right.
Total strokes gained, 16th. Total strokes gained, 16th, top 20. I mean, come on. Tee to green, 32nd. Off the tee, don't care, 102nd. Approach, not great, 56th. Around the green, 12th. Bogey avoidance, 16th. Strong iron player. If you're worried about the weather, Kirk won at the Honda Classic where it's super windy. And he's played well. Well, he's played okay. I mean, he had a top 10 at the Texas Open last week, so he played well last week. He had 39th at the API, but he was cut at the Players. So the only other major, biggest problem is, the Masters is another tournament where you probably want to have played the course in a while, and he hasn't played the Masters since 2016. So if I'm hoping that he got out there today, got a couple practice rounds in, I'm hoping he didn't just like go out and be like, wow, it's gorgeous. Can't wait to play. Hoping he swung the club a couple times. I'd have to check up on old Chris. But yeah, so that's your concern. It's been a while since Chris has played at Augusta National, but he got that exemption because he won at the Honda.
The Honda, yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I just think, I'm not saying he puts it together, but he's already won this year on tour, and that was not a crowded field, but I don't know. I mean, he's kind of a shaky pick now I think about it, because even at the Honda, he tried to lose it. He shot it into the water and had to win in a playoff. So I don't know. Maybe not the best bet, but still, I kind of like it. So I'm going to go with it.
And he's been around the top of the leaderboard in a major before, too. He played really well at the PGA last year. So, he's kind of got a little bit of experience there as well. So, I don't know. I mean, I think the familiarity is definitely important, but he definitely fits the bill of sort of like short game wizard that we're looking for.
Yeah, and that is what I'm looking for, is just a short game wizard. So I'm just going to continue to hit those numbers there. We'll see. I don't know. Tom Hoagie's my favorite long odds guy right now. That's the guy I'm most excited about. But I'm sure Scottie will win, and then it's like, why do we even do this podcast?
Yeah,
it's kind of, yeah. Like, I don't. This. I mean, I love Scottie, but it's like,
yeah,
I don't know. What are any of us doing? If
the
Scottie
reality is
winning?
like, it'll probably be someone towards the top of the odds. But if it's not Scottie, it'll be someone that's probably shorter than 30 to 1. I mean, that's just sort of how the Masters is. I mean, even with Danny Willett, we look at that as like a big example of like, sort of like a long shot winning. I think he was 50 to 1 to win.
Yeah.
Then. So it's like not even that crazy. I saw a stat. It was something like 27.1 to 1 was the average winner for the Masters in the last like 15 years. The odds they went off. So long shots are fun, but they just don't necessarily work here. Everyone knows what's going on.
Let's end here. Any shot that Tiger can pull off some more magic at 80 to 1?
I would like to think so. I mean, I think that, there's a real possibility that Tiger, can be relevant. I mean, and the numbers sort of reflect that. I mean, like plus 600 for like a sneaky, like backdoor, like top 10 isn't like terrible. But I think you can do better things with money than to put him at on 80 to 1 to win the whole thing, especially with just so many guys playing so well. It would just be even more historic than last time he won here. in terms of just like making the needle move.
If I can find some odds for him to make the cut, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that. And if he makes the cut, then I'm going to throw it on whatever his odds are for the top 5. That's what I'm kind of going to do. So maybe the make the cut is 2-1. I put a little bit of money on there. Now I got 2-1 odds. Now I throw that on top 5. Maybe his top 5 is at that point, maybe 8-1 or something. And maybe he finishes top 5. You just never know. I mean, he's a guy who he can do that. That's what he does. So, well, it's going to be an incredible tournament. The LIV stuff is the most fascinating. We probably could have done an hour just on the weird dynamic. I know the PGA didn't do a great job of setting up the groupings. You would have really hoped to throw the LIV guys in with Rory and Patrick Reed. Come on. It's just right there. And I know it's not it's just, you can't do it, but come on. Couldn't you? I mean, they're both playing in the tournament. You could have put them together. So
yeah, and they definitely tried to sort of spread them all around, right? So that it didn't become too much of a focus, I think. And that's something that, they're always cognizant of. There's only 2 guys that play on LIV Tour that are even in the same opening group, right? And it's just Kokrak and Gooch. And they have to play with Sandy Lyle, who's 700 years old. So good for them. But other than
Sandy
that,
Sandy Lyle's a 2-time champion at the Masters.
Institution.
He's definitely an institution.
Yeah, and they aren't doing Reed any favors. They just kind of made the short game lunatic category with him, whether it's him, Svensson, and Thigala, just dudes that like to get weird off the tee. Don't stand 300 yards off the tee box when they're teeing off, because there's a good chance one might land in your lap.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well,
So
it should be fun.
It'll be fun.
Super excited. I've got all weekend. We've all got all weekend here. You got to check out that Masters app. Going to be exciting golf. And Nate, I think if you're free, what I really would like to do is get together on Sunday after the Masters and just do a quick reaction, maybe 20 minutes, just talk about who won and how excited we are, how the tournament was. So we'll kind of hop on here on Sunday, do the same thing, and we'll throw that up on YouTube. Thanks everyone for listening to this week's episode of Clubhouse Picks, brought to you by Godzilla Wins. You can download and listen to Clubhouse Picks on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please be sure to download, rate, and review if you like the show. That really helps us out as we're trying to grow the show. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to smash that subscribe button for everything sports related from Godzilla Wins, and drop a comment with your picks of the players. I'm going to post my card here very shortly. We will see you next week and Nate, I messed it up because I don't know what's coming next. I've been so locked into the Masters. You got any idea?
Gosh. I
I didn't update
we got
this,
the RBC Heritage. I should have known that. And Hilton Head.
Of course. That's right. So we'll see you next week for the RBC Heritage in Hilton Head. Happy golfing. Happy Masters. Enjoy the tournament just as we will.